Hi, and welcome to Kismet Mystic. I'm Jackie Abramov, and I'm so grateful you're here. Kismet is an offering to just weave in all the different modalities that I have used that have supported me in my personal journey, in my hero's journey, and that I hope will also support you. I'm seeking to support people to gain fulfilling lives and to learn for themselves what is deeply inside of them. And that's really the topic for today. Is I'm going to talk about consciousness, awareness, the unconscious, and the shadow. And there's so many ways I could talk about this. And honestly, this is to me, a really big and somewhat overwhelming topic to talk about. I um, I have been just going over how to share about this for many days, and I'm just going to do my best. I'll start with astrology. I think that astrology is this incredible language where it supports us to learn about ourselves and to see things in more intentional ways. And for me, astrology has been a tool of understanding the unconscious and consciousness and the shadow. And when I look at astrology charts, that is what I can see. Most astrologers, when they're looking at astrology, they see the surface, they see the awareness, they see the key words. It's not that they don't see the shadow or they don't see the unconscious, but they're typically not speaking to it, which is what I'm seeking to do, because I actually believe um, that the key to our liberation, to our inner freedom, is completely connected to the unconscious, to our shadow. And if we're going to get free, if we're going to feel fulfilled, if we're going to know ourselves, if we're going to be conscious, then we need to know about these things that are hidden within us. So I love astrology as a tool for all the different ways that it can be used. It can be used on a more surface level. I love that. I use that. But I want to talk about it from a deeper perspective. Like, that's really important to me. So another thing I'll say about astrology is it's a great tool for getting information and knowledge. And information and knowledge tends to make us feel like we're more powerful. And while that has some good aspects to it, it can also really be detrimental because when we only have external knowledge and only external information and not internal, then we actually get stuck and we create this illusion that we're consciously aware when we're only informationally aware, which is very different than conscious awareness. So when I talk about awareness and consciousness, I'm talking about two completely different things in the way I'm going to talk about it today. They're related, but they're very different. So awareness is kind of the first step, right? It's how we gather information. It's the absorbing of information. It's a learning. This is, this is what awareness is. We learn something we didn't know. And, it's like when you learn that you're a Gemini rising, well, you gain awareness around what a Gemini rising is, what that might mean. So with awareness, we gain language, we gain that external understanding. This equals this, 1+1=2, right? And this is great. This is needed. This is an important level of learning and moving into more conscious awareness. So I keep saying consciousness. What I'm talking about when I'm talking about consciousness is a somewhat complex topic. It is a deeper understanding of ourselves, and it's connected to the why behind all of your actions. When you're conscious, you know why you're doing what you're doing. You know what you're seeking. You know what you're feeling. You know what your feelings are connected to. You know what your needs are. This is what consciousness is. When you're conscious, you know the true intention behind all of your motives, behind all of your words, behind everything that you express, every behavior, every reason that you're in a relationship. You understand the motive and the intention behind why you're doing what you're doing. So this is very important to understand. Now, becoming conscious means that we also have an unconscious, and that is where all of our information is stored. It's the unconscious is extremely important. The unconscious is this part of us that we created. It's deep inside of us, and it contains all our emotions, all of our feelings, all of our motivations, and all of our desires. So our unconscious is what we're trying to uncover through consciousness. Our unconscious is actually what's directing our lives. It directs how we act, what we think, how we talk, how we respond, and the emotions that we're having. So, like I'm saying, the unconscious is what comes first, and it is our inner belief system. We created an inner belief system that was developed by us based on our interpretation of the experiences that we had as a child. And then we just built upon that child story, narrative, belief system that we created. So the interpretation, I'm going to refer to it as an inner narrative or a story. And this forms the basis for all of our beliefs about our life, about ourselves. It holds the unconscious, holds all of our ideas about what is good and what is not good, what is safe and what is not safe. So it's very important to understand that we have this unconscious and that it is directing our lives. And we do this, we create this unconscious because it is how we're going to find a sense of safety and security in the world around us. The unconscious is our root. It is the basis for who we are. In astrology, the unconscious is related to 3 different houses, the 4th, the 8th, and the 12th, and it's related to the water sign, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And the unconscious, it is this part of us that holds all of our emotions, because every story that we create, every narrative is connected with our feelings and our emotions. And so that's one of the things that makes it so incredibly delicate and yet important to work with. It's important to know that what we created when we were young, the stories, the narratives, the beliefs, are not right or wrong. They just simply are what they are. We created them based on our experiences, and we formed them. It's important to know that we formed them. We programmed ourselves. A lot of times when people talk about programming, they talk as though culture programmed us, but actually we programmed ourselves. And it's important to remember that, because that is where empowerment is going to come from as we gain consciousness. So if you understand that you programmed yourself, then you understand that you can reprogram yourself. And again, I believe that the unconscious is so important that it is literally the key to inner liberation and freedom. And most people are living most of their lives completely unconscious. And that is not a judgment. That is just what it is, because becoming conscious is not an easy task, as I'm going to describe as I go through talking about these parts of the unconscious. So within the unconscious is held the shadow, and the shadow is our most tender and vulnerable space. The shadow is the part of us that we had to suppress or push down out of our awareness. It's the part of us that we told ourselves was bad, not acceptable, should be rejected. And so an example of what our shadow could be, and shadow can be many things. Shadow can even be good things, right? And again, I'm trying to eliminate the judgment of anything here, but our shadow is the creation of judgment. And so An example would be if your parents yelled at you when you were little. Let's say they told you, if you're crying, you're going to go to your room. And so what you would have maybe done is suppressed all of the feelings and emotions that you had, pushed them down, pushed down the tears in order to not be sent away from your parents. So you push down sadness, and you push that sadness, that emotion, that feeling down into your shadow. Then you also created a story about that. And you created this inner narrative. And it could have been something like, I can't show anyone that I'm sad, or I will be sent away. And so this becomes this base belief system that you develop. And again, I mean, most people experienced many times of being yelled at and then told, you know, to go away if they're crying. And so we experience these things over and over again, and they just get more and more ingrained in us. So we formulate layers upon layers of these stories and these beliefs about what we experience. And I really, again, want to reiterate that it's not about them being right or wrong. It's just about them existing, that they did exist, that they do exist. So again, I don't know if I said this before, but just remember that the shadow and the unconscious are a slippery little fish, and they're difficult to come to understand at times because there's complexities to who we are and how we developed, and the people in our lives and the circumstances. And so if you're going to work with somebody because you have a complex situation, make sure that you work with somebody who really knows and has done their own shadow work. And I'll be honest, I've met very few people who have actually done their own shadow work and understood their unconscious and aren't judging the unconscious. Okay, we'll come back to that later. So as you can imagine, the unconscious and the shadow keep us from seeing, knowing, and feeling parts of ourselves, right? Because if it's something we've suppressed, it means that we're not aware of it. We don't want to be aware of it because it feels unsafe to be aware of the feeling, the knowing of some part of ourselves. And nothing, I'll be honest, nothing has transformed my life more than becoming aware of what I've suppressed into my shadow and my unconscious. Learning to feel everything that I didn't feel as a child, and even the things I suppressed as an adult, was so vital in me transforming, healing, loving myself, finding acceptance, understanding everything that I'm talking about now. And this is actually what supported me in developing the somatic release, Reiki, and reprogramming, because I learned for myself that the only way to become empowered is through understanding what is in my unconscious and my shadow and bringing it out and feeling it and not resisting it any longer. And this is not easy to do. You need a safe place to do this. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So how does this relate to astrology? Well, astrology, like I said, is a language, and it is most clearly a language of duality and polarity. And duality is contrast, right? It's about everything having an opposite. And polarity reveals that there's an inherent similarity between two things that appear to be opposite. So, for example, Cancer and Capricorn, they are on the same axis. They have a contrast, but they also have a similarity. And they're both yin energies, but there's contrast, right? We have Cancer being the feelings, the emotions, the innermost self. It's a water energy. And then Capricorn being earth, being about what we project out to the world. So this relates to the conscious and the unconscious, right? Just like everything has a conscious side, everything has an unconscious side. And every light has a shadow, right? Shadow does not mean that something is bad. Shadow means something is unseen, cast away, or unknown. Really important to remember this. Now, Cancer as a energy, as an archetype, is very symbolic of our deepest soul self. And it relates in the chart and in our lives to the stories, the beliefs, and the programs that we hold in our unconscious self. This is our deepest emotional self, right? Cancer is a water energy. Water symbolizes emotions. And quite literally, the water that's inside our bodies, which, if you know, we're a very high percentage of water, the water that's inside of our bodies, that's flowing within us, holds unconscious stories, beliefs, feelings, reactions, and it holds our shadow. I could talk about this forever. It is incredibly fascinating, but it's important now that I'm not going to go into that, just that you understand that Cancer is water. Water is about emotions, and we're dealing with these emotions that have been programmed into us by us since we were children. So, and we suppressed so much of our emotions and feelings because it wasn't safe to feel them. So during Cancer season, this is a profound time to be working on our emotional state. This is a great time to be working on the shadow. And that is one of the reasons that I'm talking about this now. So to bring in an example, Cancer is an archetype. Archetypes are things that are symbolic of ways that we express. So when you think of somebody that's a Cancer sun, for example, you would describe them with archetypal words such as a nurturer, a caretaker, a mother, someone that's warm, generous, empathetic, right? These are words most people would use to describe somebody who has a Cancer sun. This is the awareness that I was talking about in the beginning. This is like the very beginning step. Oh, I can see that like these are qualities of this this person, right? Now, you also have unconscious Cancer expressions, and we often don't like to identify with them. So the shadowy parts of Cancer energy, the archetypes that we also associate with Cancer would be things like moody, resentful, overly sensitive, overwhelmed, savior, overly mothering, right? This is the parts of Cancer energy that we kind of want to push away from. Like if you're a Cancer sun, you might be like, well, yeah, like I'm only that way because of other people. So we don't want to associate with those shadowy qualities. And that pushes them even further from our consciousness. So we're aware of them, but we're not conscious of them, because becoming conscious of them would mean that we know why we're moody, resentful, overwhelmed, upset. And typically what we do is we blame the circumstances, the people, we project our why onto someone or something outside of us. So if you're projecting it outside of you, you're not conscious of it, because consciousness means taking full ownership of everything that you're experiencing. That's why it's so hard to do. That's why people don't like to do it, because it feels unsafe, because we don't want to identify ourselves with these kinds of feelings and emotions that we have labeled as bad, right? So if you find yourself saying things like, well, that's just the way I am, that's an unconscious thing to say. Anyone that's saying this is just the way they are, they don't understand the why behind it. They don't understand their intentions, their motivation. So it's neither right nor wrong. Being unconscious isn't right or wrong. It's just that when we're unconscious, we're not empowered. So try to remember that there's no judgment with not having a conscious awareness about something. It's just knowing that this is where I'm lacking power. If I am unconscious, I'm lacking power, personal power. So As I said, we're mainly expressing most of our lives from this very unconscious state of being. And we do this until we bump up against something that's so difficult or so hard that we have to do something about it. Sometimes illness will do that. Sometimes change in life, losing someone, breakup, they can push us to our limits where we're like, something else is going on here. I've got to understand what it is. But many people live their entire lives completely unconsciously. But when we do this, when we live unconsciously, we get stuck. And getting stuck looks like getting sick and not knowing why. It looks like being stressed. It looks like being depressed. It looks like being bitter, angry, resentful, any of the stuck feelings, right? The shadow and the unconscious, again, they're our key to unlocking our inner self. So if you want to get out of being sick and stressed and stuck and depressed and angry and bitter, then the invitation is, okay, I have to come inward. I have to look inside. There's something I don't see about myself. And there's no judgment with that, right? We need to remove the judgment. That's super important. Now, like I said, this is not an easy task. We are very deep vessels, and our unconscious and shadow are subtle energies. They're difficult to articulate. We feel embarrassed. We feel shame around articulating them. The shadow is like our inner protector, very symbolic of Cancer's zodiac sign, which is the crab, right? The crab has this hard outer shell, and it's protecting everything that's very soft and very vulnerable inside. And that's our shadow and our unconscious. It's this part of us, but specifically the shadow is this part of us that's very tender. And we usually have a lot of shame around our shadow. So this means if we have a lot of shame around it, we need to be very tender with ourselves. And we need to become safe people for ourselves. You are not going to be able to work with your shadow unless you become a safe person. And becoming safe means cultivating non-judgment, understanding ourselves through non-judgment. I cannot emphasize enough how important this is. Non-judgment will change your life. It has changed mine. Non-judgment is about understanding that, okay, it's about understanding that we created ourselves as small children without understanding exactly what we were doing. And our shadow is a very sensitive place that we have shame. And we want to try to remove that. So because this inner shadow, this inner protector is the judge, it's the thing that has said, crying is bad, being selfish is bad, being too bright is bad, being too smart is bad, whatever it is, right? So you want to check in with yourself and find out, are you a safe, non-judgmental person? Most people will say that they're non-judgmental, but that's actually not true. Most people are extremely judgmental of themselves first and foremost, but then of others. And you can always know if you're judgmental of yourself by checking in to see if you think you know how other people should live their lives. Has one of the big key ways of knowing that you're extremely judgmental towards yourself is that you think you know what other people should do, and you're always trying to give them advice on to how to live their lives. Also, just noticing if you're judging other people for something they did to you, if you feel very hurt by other people, if you feel very critical of other people, if you feel very triggered by other people. This is all indications that you are self-critical, you're judging yourself, and that you are not a safe person for you to be vulnerable with. And that's what we're needing to create if we're going to become conscious. We have to become the safe vessel for ourselves. Again, this is super challenging. This is why I offer this work, because I know how hard it is to become a safe person. And I've spent several years developing non-judgment towards myself and others because I'm understanding. So again, non-judgment means that we understand that life is not personal, that the things that we did weren't personal, they weren't about other people, that everything was about trying to get our needs met and create safety for ourselves. And so even if you had some kind of addiction in an unconscious state, you do not want to be looking back on that past version of yourself and judging them, shaming them, thinking that they were wrong or bad. That shows that you're not safe. If you're going to be a safe person for yourself, you need to be able to look back on that past version of yourself and understand that you were trying to meet your needs in the only way you knew how at that time. That removes all judgment. There's nothing to judge. You were just being a human and trying to get your needs met. And that brings compassion and love, and it takes away the shame. So non-judgment means that we resist or we've released the need to fix, to solve, to control things outside of us. It means that we look beyond what we can see with our eyes, and we actually begin to see the deeper level of what people are trying to do, what we are trying to do. So non-judgment is very connected with how we're going to become conscious. We come humbly within ourselves, and we don't blame outside of ourselves. So you can begin, working with this by asking yourself questions like, what need was I trying to get met from this experience? Or why did I need to communicate myself that way? What was I afraid of? Or you could ask, what is it that I need to do to take care of myself? Why am I looking for someone else to meet my needs? When we're doing shadow work, when we're doing inner work towards consciousness, we are learning to become our own parent. And so we have to reparent ourselves and become the safe space. We become the safe space for that child self that created our shadow and our unconscious. It's important to remember that you cannot love or accept anything that you're in resistance to. When you resist something, you push it away and you reject it. And so this is really important. I hear a lot of people on podcasts or just people talking in general, and they are in constant resistance to the old version of them. There is some like, I was once this, and now I'm this new thing, and now I'm good. And a lot of people in like spiritual communities, any kind of self-help, self-growth communities will do this to themselves. And it's extremely damaging to their shadow, to their psyche, to their unconscious. Because when you're saying you were bad, that means, number one, you didn't understand that you were simply trying to get a need met. And number two, you're saying that part of you, which will never go away, is not worthy, is not good. And you're comparing. Anytime we're comparing, we're in judgment. So you're judging that old version of you and you're comparing it to this version of you now. This is extremely important to remember. You want to go to every version of yourself and bring loving, non-judgment, acceptance, and understanding. Like I said, why did you do what you do? Not what happened to you. Why did you end up in that situation? Why did you create the story that you did? Again, this is extremely complex. So many things are running through my mind right now. But if you have a complexity This is why you work with somebody who understands subtle energy. Be very careful who you're working with, because people tell you all kinds of things that aren't true. But yes, coming back to self-acceptance is self-love, and acceptance is non-judgment. So non-judgment means we don't condone, we don't approve, we don't say, oh yeah, I'm so glad that I was this way that was, really harmful to me. No, but we don't dismiss it or reject it either. So it's just understanding, okay, you know what? I was addicted to this thing, and I was addicted because I was trying to get a need met, and that's not right or wrong. That's just being human. So it's incredibly important to always come back to remembering that consciousness is about understanding our why. Why are we doing what we're doing? Why? Our why is connected to our intentions and our motives. It's connected to our needs and getting our needs met. Our why is connected with what we want and what we desire. Now, our culture is very against anything that is about being selfish. The idea of selfishness is completely rejected in our culture. We do not like to think that we have any selfish motives, and we like to think that we're selfless. This is because self-motivation has been pushed into our shadow, individually and collectively. But the thing is, every single thing we do is from a selfish motive, and our intention is about ourselves. It is the most natural thing any human being would do. We can't help it. This is what life does. Life lives for itself. We do everything to get a result, to get a response, to have an experience, to meet a need. Nothing comes from pure selflessness. Nothing. We can't do things from selflessness. It's not possible because we're motivated intrinsically. So if you are hungry, you eat because you want to get full. Maybe you talk to people because you want to have a conversation, or you want people to like you. Maybe you help people because you want people to think that you're good. Maybe you go to work because you want to get paid, right? Maybe you're in a relationship because you want love and attention. Maybe you're in a relationship because you want security. These things are not right or wrong. They're just the true inner motivations that motivate us. And we've been pushing them away. We've been pushing them into our shadow. And this is what is creating so much turmoil in our lives, that we're not aware of what we really need and want. So remember, no matter how good, no matter how righteous or loving your actions appear to be, if you aren't clear about why you're doing what you're doing, then you're acting unconsciously. Our true inner why is not, this is the way I am. That is a way of avoiding being vulnerable with yourself and honest about your true intentions and motivations. And I understand why everyone does this, because it's in our shadow and we're scared of what people will think. We're scared of being bad or wrong or not looking good in the eyes of others. And that's okay. But our human tendency is to blame other people for why we feel what we feel. And it's important that you remember that that is not going to serve you when you're looking at your shadow and your unconscious, okay? We want to take ownership of ourselves. We are doing what we're doing because we have a motive, because we have an intention. Think of it like this. When a baby's crying, it has a need and it's trying to tell us about that need. When that need gets met, the crying stops. So when you feel anxious, when you feel depressed, when you feel worried, stressed, whatever you feel, the invitation is to come inside and to ask yourself, what is the need that I need to meet? What is the desire that I have right now? And resist trying to blame anyone else and simply take ownership for the need that you have. Maybe that need that you have that's not getting met, that's causing you to feel stressed or anxious or upset, will make you, maybe you need to cry because of that. Probably, I mean, everyone needs to cry. This is the most suppressed thing that's on the inside of us, our tears. And this is what the journey of consciousness is about. It's about becoming aware of our feelings and our motivations and how we've suppressed them. There's no way to become conscious without becoming aware of your motivations, your needs, and your shadow. And this is what self-love is. You can't love what you don't know. You can't love a part of yourself you don't trust, that you don't understand. So it's incredibly challenging to do this, but it is the most powerful, beautiful work that you can do, and it will transform your life. So Cancer season is a really beautiful time for us to be working on these deeper levels of self-awareness. This is the time when we're more sensitive. We have several planets in Cancer, and that means our sensitivity is heightened. And the planets are symbolic of what's happening on the inside of us. They're not dictating our lives. They're showing us, yes, this is a season, this is a time where you might be feeling more sensitive. So again, this is, how we learn to love ourselves, and loving ourselves has a lot to do with the totality of us, loving our shadow, knowing our shadow, and not rejecting ourselves. Again, many complexities. If you're interested in a one-to-one session, reach out to me. There's probably so much more that I could share about this, but I think that I'm gonna close it out for today. That was a lot. I hope some or all of that lands for you. If you want to reach out to me for a one-to-one session, astrology reading, you can reach me on my website at kismetmystic.com or on Instagram at inspire_authenticity. And I just wish you the best in Cancer season and in finding and connecting with your unconscious.